Hello everybody, welcome back to the Grand Torino. Before we get started, don't forget, press the like button, subscription and the little blue bell and you'll be reminded of future conversations on the Grand Torino. Before I introduce my next guest, I want to thank all my subscribers for interacting on the Grand Torino website, www.grandtorino.ie, and all the Patreons and the PayPal subscribers that have moved over onto the website there. Thank you for your continued support. And I encourage you to keep it up. Don't forget we have monthly payment plan or just a one-off donation. Or if you don't think you can even afford that, let the ad roll on the on the video here. It all helps with the algorithms. So I'm delighted to introduce to you Jim Miller. How are you, sir?
I'm good, I think.
Thank you for
nobody
inviting me.
told me otherwise, so I don't stay asking.
Thank you for inviting me up to your beautiful home here. It's a beautiful location up here. You're running as an independent candidate in the European elections.
Yes, I am.
You're out here in Kilbeggan, County Westmeath.
Correct.
And you are running under the banner of Spirit of Éireann.
Yes, which is sort of a think tank for the want of a better term.
Let me just say for my audience here the tenets that you're running on, the core tenets: the nation, vision, and solutions. Support the family and family values. Ethical banking, community. Public banks for Ireland, safe regulation of Wi-Fi and safe fibre alternative to 5G, crisis pregnancy support and adoption, and bring our immigrants home. All very much close to my heart, and I'm sure many of my viewers out there as well will also agree. Can you just explain to me your platform, please?
Well, I suppose the first thing I should sort of explain to people is why I'm here in the first place. There are many reasons, and I mean, I'm fundamentally a private sort of individual and I never had any particular ambitions to be in public life, but I find myself in a position of knowing certain things and I believe in doing something about it rather than talking about it, and I believe in solutions. I believe in taking action rather than spending my life criticising the world, and I've lived up to that. And I mean, I set up the Public Banking Forum in 2013. I was involved in the establishment of Spirit of Éireann back in 2012. And out of that grew the Public Banking Forum. And then I got involved to some degree in Business Retail Union of Ireland. And in 2017, then out of that again came the Hemp Cooperative Ireland in a roundabout way. And two of the people who were involved originally in Spirit of Éireann were directly responsible for setting up Hemp Cooperative Ireland, along with an outsider. Now,
so just to say that, Hemp Cooperative Ireland.
Yes.
That's the hemp.
Yes, a new cooperative to promote the development of industrial hemp. And I am a firm believer that industrial hemp has the potential to change the entire thrust of development in this country towards rejuvenating every place from Carndonagh back to Carsiveen and from there to Carnsore and Dundalk. The thousands and thousands of jobs can be created from industrial hemp. It's extraordinary, in fact, that this hasn't been done. But then again, Chagas grew it for 5 or 6 years down in Carlow, and amazingly, they did no research into the usages of the crop. When in actual fact there are 50,000 different applications from industrial hemp, and that's before you deal with the flower and the seed.
Right.
Like, it's a phenomenal crop.
Why has that not been articulated or expressed or even brought up for debate?
Well, even in this context of the election, it hasn't been possible to get any discussion about it. I mean, I was in yesterday evening watching, I might add, in Athlone, the drive time programme, where the RTE, in their wisdom, interviewed 6 out of 17 candidates.
Yeah.
You know. So which that in itself says. But, I mean, I didn't hear one useful suggestion as to what can be done to refocus agriculture on something useful. I mean, we've coughed up the beef industry years ago to very strong vested interests. And when we did have cooperatives and that, all them are for the most part gone. Granted, Dairygold and Glanbia and Kerry have grown out of that, phenomenal institutions, but we didn't quite do the same thing in the beef sector. And we're at the mercy of a whole range of things at the moment. And dare I say it, the principle of putting all the eggs in the dairy basket has to be questioned.
Yeah.
Because even in the last few days, we have seen the Americans and the Chinese go to war over, I don't mean physical war, but trade war. Now, and if people think that that doesn't matter, yes, it does, because most people in Ireland think we have a thing called neutrality. That neutrality was coughed up by Ireland's negotiators before we joined the EU.
Lisbon Treaty.
EEC. No.
Oh, before the EU, sorry.
Before we joined the EEC.
Yeah.
I'm talking 1970.
Apologies, yeah.
Now, I am one of very few people who know that.
Okay.
And I'll explain that to you in a minute, but how that translates today is that I think it's something like 3.2 million American troops who are carrying their arms through Shannon Airport. As a neutral country, that shouldn't be happening. Now, if there is no issue here, and I know this now, for a long time I sort of took the view, well, sure, maybe not one goes through, but I know because I met two Americans who are on bail in Ireland at the moment. They were arrested in Shannon on Patrick's Day as part of a group making protest at the abuse of a civilian airport by the American military. Now, as a nation or a state, whichever way you want to look at that, whichever way you understand it, we have accommodated the American military machine in their destruction of Iraq, whatever role they played in Syria, and the destruction of Libya.
I agree.
We have agreed, we have facilitated that. So don't let anyone tell you that we are a neutral country. Theoretically we are. You can translate that further into the issues with the Financial Services Centre and the foreign direct investment in Ireland, the non-payment of tax, and that's a whole massive subject that I'd love to go into in time. I mean, in 2015, there was a new term developed in Irish economics, and it was called leprechaun economics. And that arose because a particular company put a lot of money through Ireland, and with no benefit to us, by the way. In 2018, that translates into a 300 billion GDP figure, which contains 132 billion of leprechaun activity. That contributes nothing to the gross national income, which is effectively 168 billion, and even the NTMA, as far as I know, questioned the validity of the GNI figure at 168 billion. Now, as late as this morning, and I was at the beef thing in Ballinasloe last week, they mentioned on the radio that the suckler farm industry in Ireland is worth 3 billion to the economy. Now, put that in the context of the 132 billion of leprechaun activity in the Financial Services Centre that contributes nothing.
Yeah.
Now, take the 3 billion that we contribute from the suckler industry.
Yeah.
Look at all the people that are employed in that from one end of the country to the other, in all different ways. And yet the official Ireland tolerates 132 billion of, well, there's words for it, but I'll call it leprechaun activity. So that doesn't matter.
So just on a brief aside with that, would you be in favour of white-collar crime or white-collar crime prosecutions, or do you think that a national government will resolve that, or your banking, community banking, with a decent financial regulator will be able to come to task and take that to task, that information?
That's a really good question. I think naivety doesn't cut the mustard.
Yeah. Or ignorance.
Well, either, or both. The great thing about the public banking proposal is it's something within our own hands. And we will have the support of the vast majority of the German people if we go down this road, which we are going down. We're working on it, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But you asked a particular question. In the big bad world that's out there, Gaddafi was very sovereign in his approach. He had a lot of great plans for Libya. And one of the things that he built a 3,000 kilometre water pipeline to irrigate a big section of the Sahara Desert and bring it back into production.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Okay. One of the first things that was done when they invaded Lebanon was they blew that to smithereens. Now, if Gaddafi was the problem, why did they blow up the water pipeline and drive Libya back into the dark ages? In this day and age, it has to be simple if Gaddafi was the problem. Now, I don't believe Gaddafi was a bad guy by any standards. I'd have a lot more problems with Clinton. Gaddafi didn't invade America. No. And whoever Clinton was functioning for, I won't go into that, I have an idea, but what she presided over in Libya was criminal. But by our allowing Shannon Airport to be used, we cannot wash our hands completely of that. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that we have to see what we can do. And the public banking project is in our hands. It's not dependent on anybody else. It's up to us to understand this. It was understood 80 years ago. It's in the Constitution, as I think Seamus May explained to you.
Yeah.
The management and the benefit of the credit of the nation is for the public, not for vested interests. But it's an extraordinary thing that the 37 Constitution was only 5 years in place when a bill went through the government at the time. I think Sean T. O'Kelly was president or Taoiseach, I'm not sure. And they put through the Central Bank Act, 1942.
Right.
And what that did was it gave control over and benefit of the credit of the nation to the stock bank holders. It's still the same to the point today that they have practically total control over the credit of the nation. That is not correct. Now, that's up to us to change.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of changing regulation. It's about putting in place units of banking that service the public and by their very presence take back the power. The power is there for us to take. It's there sitting on the plate. Now, even 6 years ago, I didn't understand this when I set up the Public Banking Forum. But I heard Ellen Brown on an interview one night with Max Kaiser, and it really shone a light on a dark spot. And out of that, the team that is the Public Banking Forum for 6 years now, almost, we've done phenomenal research, consulted with the best.
Yeah.
And we have very competent people now on board with the project. We are actually looking for funding to open the first bank. And once we get one open, we'll roll them over. And generally this objective is to open a bank, a community bank in every county. The smaller counties might struggle for a little while, but that can be done. And the reason we're opting for county banks is that firstly, the smaller they are, the better. We do not want big elephantine banks. As a certain good, competent guy said, the smaller they are, the better, because the less harm they can do. Now, we should know what harm means in the context of the banking.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that we should learn from our mistakes. But so far, official Ireland has refused to learn anything from the crash. Absolutely nothing has been done to fix the problem. Not alone that, they haven't even discussed the problem. They don't even want to know what the problem is. And, I mean, if you take Allied Irish and Bank of Ireland, they're going to have 20 years tax-free now, which, I don't know, works into maybe 60 billion.
Huge amount of money.
Now, how much did we give them already? So, I mean, it's extraordinary. Our AIB, I think, is priced or valued at around 10 or 12 billion at the moment, but we gave them 22 billion. They're only worth half of it, if they are, and we're going to give them 20 years tax-free so that they can, I won't even use the language.
Where's the benefit to us? Like if the ordinary Joe Soap is to look at that pound for pound cost, value for money, official Ireland is complicit in the destruction of the not the destruction of the economy, the manipulation of the economy for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. And jumping and tying that in with your Libya and the Shannon Airport thing, it's not we the people that are responsible for that. It's the officialdom, Ireland officialdom, because people have to kind of come around to the idea the nepotism has gone grandiose.
But it has never been otherwise.
It has never been otherwise. I appreciate that.
No. And I mean, it has certainly spiraled into the modern world where it's so easy to control things. Like, you can shut down a computer network like that. Mm-hmm. It has become very, very simple. But I think the most fundamental thing that people need to come to terms with is the whole question of the basis of the banking industry. And the basis of that is that 97% of the entire industry is credit. Mm. And if all of that means it's all a form of debt. If it was all paid off, there would be technically nothing in the system. But maybe 3% that's actually in cash. Now, how do I move that on? If the public only realised, and Henry Ford said this 100 years ago, if the public only realised what the banking industry actually does, there'd be a revolution overnight. Yeah. Now, bring it on, because that needs to happen, because all of this illusion of a quadrillion plus of debt is just a manufactured illusion funding a corrupted industry.
Hugely, vastly corrupted.
You can't,
mind-bogglingly corrupt.
Well, in a way, it's corrupt, but there's another word for it as well. It's designed to do what it's doing, and our problem is that we're letting them do it.
Yes.
We allow them. Now, because people kowtow to Lord, or somebody said, and I mean, I do listen to outbursts or outpourings from the central bank from time to time. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the central bank is the problem.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no point in sticking a tooth in it. The central bank claims to be responsible for creating or maintaining stability in the economy. It wouldn't know stability if it bit him in the arse.
Yeah.
I mean, it is complicit. It doesn't want to know what goes on in the financial services centre. When Sugarman back in 2007 went to the central bank.
That's Jonathan Sugarman, and Jonathan, us, hope you're well.
Good on you, Jonathan.
We all appreciate what you've done, and we know the torment you're going through.
Yes, and it has to be acknowledged. But official Ireland did absolutely nothing. The crash could have been prevented, as Jonathan Sugarman said. But you couldn't do that. And what did they do? If I remember properly, they appointed one of the board of UniCredit to the board of the central bank, rather than to deal with the problem. So we arrived we went and had a banking inquiry then that was designed to look in the very opposite direction to where the problem was. So in case somebody might figure out what actually happened. Now, again, I am a bit cynical, but one of the first things I learned, probably before I ever heard Ellen Brown, was I remember an interview between Greg Palast and Max Kaiser. And it was about the Endgame memo. And it was about that memo was written by the executives of the top 6 banks in America back around about 1989, I think. And the purpose of it was to blow up the world economy. Now, part of the process then was to get rid of effectively the Glass-Steagall Act, and Clinton did his party piece there. I might have the dates not exactly right, but they're back there somewhere.
Yeah.
And derivatives went from being illegal on one side to now being both legal and unregulatable. Now, and part of the deal was that if anyone wanted to do business with America, you would have to buy junk bonds out of America. Now, that's part of what happened in Europe. And like, what maintained the German economy is the fact that even though Deutsche Bank, if I'm not mistaken, had 60 billion of Washington Mutual bonds when Washington Mutual went bust in February of 2008. Even at that, Deutsche and Commerce have only 12% of the German market. If they had what AIB and Bank of Ireland have of the Irish market, then the German economy would have blown out of...
Well, just to say, Deutsche Bank, 57 trillion in debt at the moment. I mean, it's coming. People realise there's a crash coming. There's a reset in banking.
The figure, I don't know what it is. I thought, no, the last figure I saw for them was 48 trillion or something. I thought they had dumped 20 trillion in the last couple of years. Now, where they dumped it, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about dumping plastic in the sea, but when you dump 20 trillion or even
paper money on a digital thing,
it doesn't matter what it is. It's dumped onto something else.
Yeah.
So, but
leveraging, over leveraging, complicit leveraging, dangerous leveraging, criminal leveraging, everything that, and I want to bring us back.
Hallucination.
I want to bring us back to the three little things that we have. In the original question, prosecutions, white collar crime, just outlaid for me the necessity to enforce not only criminal prosecutions, cold case criminal prosecutions, and those complicit in those crimes, that a new financial regulator should be brought in, along with the new national government. Now, I'm spinning plates here, Jim. I know that.
Well, there's so many things that could be done. Private prosecutions might be a way to go. And that, again, is something that's up to us to do. Now, again, that's not exactly my area of expertise, or if I can be called, I don't want even to be called an expert in anything, because that's a dangerous concept. But I don't rightly know enough about the law. I know a little bit about it, and I studied legal science in college 100 years ago.
I'm sure you'd be very adept. Sorry, Jim. I just want to direct people towards the interview I did with Seamus May, and in that link, in the interview I did with Seamus May, there's a Google Drive there with the report that Seamus produced, the Banking Beef Federation. The processors buying up small community farms and essentially destroying them. As Jim says, we're heading towards the American ranch system here, where the few will control huge land masses. Your banking system is designed to counteract that also as well.
Absolutely, but I mean, here you have to introduce Agenda 21 into the discussion.
Yeah, well done.
And
it's now 2030, though, Jim.
Well, call it what you like. It's 1992, 175 countries signed up to Agenda 21. And every day of the week, I ask them, do you ever tell Agenda 21? Huh? What's that? I would hazard a guess that 99.5, if not 99.9% of the public never heard of Agenda 21. And this is quite extraordinary, because in America, their version of it is the Woodlands program.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just mind-blowing if you just look at the maps that plan the future of the United States. In this country, we have leader funding, which all comes from Agenda 21. But nobody knows what Agenda 21 is. It's fundamentally about urbanisation, removing the public from the land, and effectively a depopulation of all rural areas, returning it to nature. I mean, what are we?
We are to be pushed into mega cities.
Correct.
And we're supposed to be centralised into high-rise towers.
Correct. And I mean, the government 2040 plan tells us to our face.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's extraordinary the way things are managed and manipulated. John Moran, former Secretary of the Department of Finance, almost exactly 2 years ago did an interview in one of the Sunday papers. And in that interview, he announced government policy. Now, nobody in government was prepared to announce it, but he announced it. Now, whether he told us deliberately or just because he was doing it and thought it was a good idea, I can't speak for the man. But what he said was, the state cannot afford rural Ireland. We must build inland cities to accommodate the public. 12 months later, government puts out Programme 2040 or whatever they call it. What did they say? We're going to double Cork, Limerick and Galway. Now, this is not to relieve the pressure from Dublin. This is to accommodate the public from Donegal back to Wexford into the three cities. That's what that's about.
How do you think immigration ties in with that? Are they just building up them central cities because of the number, the sheer scale?
Well, the problem, like, I don't care what colour anyone's skin.
It's not about colour, I'm talking about numbers.
No, you're dead right. But I just want to make the point that I'm not bothered about people's colours or origin or anything else. But I am absolutely concerned about the fact that this nation is being overrun. There are, you take the vastness of countries like the Congo. I mean, there are villages places in the Congo which wouldn't hardly register as a village. They'd overrun Ireland if they were let, in terms of just simple numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, to put, as Leo Varadkar says, another million non-Irish into Ireland in the interests of multiculturalism, I think that's criminal. I mean, I can see every town I go to. I mean, you wouldn't know whether you were in Amsterdam or Nairobi, for that matter. I mean, and then there's a whole range of issues around how that's being funded, and the fact that we have 10,000 of our own homeless. Dermot Mulcahy, now, was a friend of mine, and he's standing in the say as an independent in Galway. He was in Naas the other day. And I won't go into any great detail in case the individual is nominated, but he talked about a young guy that he met on the street. And he's from a single parent family. He has no permanent home. He cannot get dole. He cannot get a job because he has no address. And he's living in a tent. Now, if he was a bullock, they'd put a tag in his ear and they'd put him into a shed. And every element of the state would be out. They'd all draw subsidies to get him in to a shed somewhere. But we don't mind. I mean, he was a bad guy. He made a mistake, or he did something, or somebody did something, so I leave him out there. He's grand.
Yeah.
We've only 10,000. I mean, I'd fix that problem in a week.
Yeah. And
to me, it's a manufactured problem.
Well, we had that young man die down there, not so 30 years of age, died on the streets. No hotels, no emergency accommodation for him.
Well,
and he was Polish.
This is criminal, and I don't care. I mean, I was listening to Mairead McGuinness in Athlone the other day at the Age Action conference, and I mean, it's very fine. I was in Mullingar yesterday, or the day before, and the amount of Mairead McGuinness posters that are up, I'd say in the space of a mile there must have been the most of €1,000 worth of posters that we're paying for. Yet we have 10,000 homeless. There's something radically wrong here. And I'm not saying that the people who work shouldn't be rewarded. That's not the issue here.
No, exactly.
That's not the issue. I make a very simple point. I do not understand how anybody in the public administrative system can draw for more than 3 or 4 times a nurse's salary. It doesn't, and even in RTE, we have the same problem. Like we have people, announcers and whatever you call program managers or whatever, drawing 4, 5, 600,000. Pat Kenny, when he was on RTE at one stage, I think he was on 900,000.
Yeah, ridiculous amount of money.
This is absurdity. And this is how RTE is so controlled. It will only debate, like where...
Also, just while you're there, Jim, just it strikes me, how many of the TV presenters are up to their necks with AIB and all the landlords?
I don't know about that part of it, but I mean, what you have is control by the vested interests. Those vested interests are the advertisers.
Yeah. Okay.
They call the shots, and you cannot criticise anything that those advertisers are doing.
Yeah.
And even in the context of the election, some of the local papers now are brilliant, and without them, the likes of me would get zero coverage. No, without them. But there's a few papers who... I was talking to Liam Minahan yesterday, and he was told fundamentally that he couldn't get anything in a particular paper down his way until he paid for an advertisement. Now, whereas a particular standing MEP put up €1,600 to get his piece in the paper.
Who paid for that?
Well, we pay for it.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, there are words that can't be expressed in public to describe this sort
Maybe
of...
our rules on electioneering need to be looked at.
I mean, like, it costs now. I understand this to some degree, because I spent nothing on this election other than the cost of diesel.
Yeah.
7,000 quid it would have cost to have that poster delivered to everybody. I am not prepared to do that.
Yeah.
Now, we put up no posters, good, bad or indifferent. I'm happy about that. But I'd like the public to know that it's costing anything up to 300,000, I'd say, in some cases. And we are funding that. We're funding individuals to spend 200,000 and 300,000 to tell us to vote for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, if that's not codology, don't ask me what's codology.
Well, that's a perfect place to end. I want to pick you up on some of your other tenants here, just to run through where we get to the end. And I'm mindful that there's a wealth of information that you have there that we could get through and stuff like that. But I want to bring us back to the 5 tenants, the tenants that you're running on in this election. Give people a chance that they've heard your solutions on the banking, and I know there's a huge wath that we haven't covered and that we could go deep into. But just in a quick fire question, the safe regulation of Wi-Fi and the 5G, which I think is fantastic, and I'm so delighted that you have this in, the crisis pregnancy support and adoption, and then finishes off then, why aren't we bringing our diaspora home, or why aren't we bringing our immigrants back to fulfil the need that immigrants are supposed to replace?
Well, the wonderful EEC and the EU, to which we are fundamentally, in overall terms, net contributors since the day we joined the EU. Whatever we pulled in terms of subsidies for farming and whatever, we coughed up certainly 240 billion by giving up the fishing industry.
Karen Devine says that in her piece in UCD.
It is criminal.
215 billion.
And it's probably multiples of that. No more than the bank bailout at 64 or 70 billion, whatever it was. I would guess that the actual cost to the Irish people is north of 500 billion. Now, I go through that in time, but I personally think that the cost to the Irish people of being in the EU, apart from the 2 generations that we exported in the meantime, is somewhere in the region of 1.5 trillion. Now, at some stage or other, there are 2 concepts out there that need to be buried for good. And one of them is growth. Growth is growth in debts. Ireland's external debt grew from 522 billion in 2002 to 2.6 trillion in 2018. That's growth. Now, growth needs to be replaced with development. Constructive, positive development. Not growth because growth is defined fundamentally by a few figures being banded together by a few smart fellas.
With no tangible results.
Well, I mean, go back to the financial services sector is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
But again...
To show you the profit line and who it's reaching and where it goes. It doesn't go out around it.
The TWZ report from June of last year said we were harbouring 105 billion a year of shifted profits. But let's go back again to your question. Remind me now what you asked me there.
Just the safety regulations, 5G, crisis pregnancy support, and then finish off on the immigration.
Well, there are 70 million Irish out there, most of whom were turfed out of here at one stage or other. And I believe we should create a facility for some of them to come back, those who want to come back, whether they're in Argentina or Australia or wherever. We should, and I know how to do that. This is not rocket science.
How would you do it?
Well, I discussed this a couple of years ago with a gentleman in Mullingar. He's in his 80s. I won't mention his name, or maybe he doesn't want me to mention his name, but he suggested that we do this through a reformed land commission and that we buy up small outlets that are now being snapped up by big farmers and use a developing permaculture model. Now, it won't suit everybody, but it will create a mechanism to bring thousands, dare I say, hundreds of thousands of people back into rural Ireland. It's perfectly feasible, perfectly workable. It's just about envisioning how to do it. It's there to be done. Now, the pro-life, and I mean, to me, that's something, if I elected, I will drive at that. Even if I'm not elected, I'm going to work at it to some degree, no more than I'm going to stay at the public banking issue and the hemp industry.
Yeah.
But if elected, I will drive that agenda in no uncertain terms. But the pro-life issue is something that I've been involved in since the early 80s. And I know we live in a very sophisticated world, and I know very crazy things happen, but I was terribly disappointed that the 8th Amendment was removed from the Constitution. There has to be better ways forward. And likewise in the context of family. Now, no more than myself, there's thousands of families out there who have all different forms of dysfunctionality. But when we abandon family as the core of society and allow ourselves to accept the communist model of family, which is a state-owned entity, then we are buying trouble at a phenomenal level. Now, I mean, we had a discussion in the group about traditional family. Now, what's a traditional family? Well, I'll tell you what a traditional family is not. Like, there was a time when people's births in this country were registered in the Bible. Well, it wasn't a bad system. Now we are registered as registered in the Bible is the wrong thing. They're written up in the Bible. Now everybody is registered. You become a corporation of the state, a financial instrument. And this is a fact. And but this is the communist model, where everybody has a price on their head. And I don't know who it was coined the phrase, but democratic communism is what we have in Europe at the moment. It's a wonderful, it's a stupid system, but I mean, it's no more democratic now than somebody having their head chopped off in a guillotine. You know, it's It's far from it. It's fundamentally the second major communist experiment. And how we're getting that is the promotion of a family that cannot function. And Cathy Sinnott raised this issue about a number of years ago now. When she was an MEP, Ireland signed up to a sort of a protocol. Oh, I don't know what she called it exactly, but anyhow. And there was the Irish representative at the time spoke on behalf of Ireland. And I'll come back to what that individual said. But the programme or the protocol was designed that 90% of all Irish children by the age of 3 would be in some form of care.
Yeah.
Okay. But the why people need to understand, and I take absolute exception to this. The why was because we cannot trust parents to rear their children. That was the reason given on behalf of us, Maria. I object to that.
Me too.
And as far as I'm concerned, family is number one. It's the core of society. And if we don't cultivate that and devote all our energies to making that work as best we can, regardless of our flaws and our faults and whatever else, but when we buy into some other crazy system whereby nobody knows who their father is, I mean, this is not a future that I would want to bequeath to my children.
James, I'm cognizant of the time, and I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much for that. There was a wealth of information there, and we'll definitely do more conversations in the future. And I'm sure you're a huge untapped resource. Again, if you're in the Westmeath area, don't forget James.
No, don't confine it to Westmeath. That's up to Mallinhead and Inishmore.
Why don't you tell the folks?
Agus tá sé táhachtach dom, agus tá sé bhí sé rianta ná mar rá cúpla nómar de hin. Tá muintir na Gaeltachta sa counter seo. Agus tá sé táhachtach díomh má hisin sibh nó má éistin sibh leis seo. Tá sé táhachtach domsa go dtigach sibhse go bhfuil an-bhá don Gaeilge agus gach a bhainnis leis an cultúr Gaeilge. Agus más rud go bhfuil vóta agat le caitheamh ná tú a ceappa gur duine mise ón Ghaeltacht nar chúla Gaeilge riamh. Tá fíor-bhá don Gaeltacht agus gach a bhainnis leis.
James, to my eternal shame, I don't understand it.
That's all right, you're safe enough.
I'll come back and learn one day. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us in this conversation. Again, if you're in the area, don't forget to support James Miller as your local candidate, and look at the tenants that he's driving home, supporting the pro-life stance. Again, vote with your conscience, do your due diligence. With all candidates as I do. James, thanks once again, and I'll see you all again on the next. I'll see you all again on the next episode of the Grand Train. Don't forget, press the like button, the subscription button, and the little blue bell, and you'll be reminded of future conversations on the Gran Torino.
Was.